Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to another class of Introduction to Logic and Critical Thinking. Dear students, in our previous lecture, we learned that a fallacy is an error in reasoning that weakens an argument. We discussed how fallacies may sound logical on the surface but lack real substance when examined closely. They distort reasoning and often mislead people into believing something that isn't necessarily true. We also explored 10 common fallacies such as ad hominem fallacy, strawman, appeal to authority, false dilemma, slippery slope, circular reasoning, and certain others. The key lesson from the lecture that we had previously was that logical thinking and sound reasoning are vital for making ethical and rational business decisions. Fallacies might make an argument sound convincing in the short term, but in the long run, they damage the credibility, trust, and decision quality. Now let us continue our discussion with some additional types of fallacies that are equally important to recognize in both logical and business communication. The 11th type of fallacy is the bandwagon fallacy. This occurs when someone argues something must be true or right because many people believe it or they are simply doing it. In other words, popularity is mistaken for correctness. For example, someone is heard saying that everyone is investing in this new app, so it must be profitable, is not a logical conclusion. In business, following trends blindly without proper analysis is very dangerous. Just because a large number of people or companies adopt a certain strategy does not mean it is the right one for your situation. Decisions should be based on evidence, not popularity. The 12th fallacy is the fallacy of equivocation. This happens when a key word in an argument is used in two different meanings, causing confusion. The argument shifts the meaning of the same word midway. For instance, a feather is a light. What is light cannot be dark. Therefore, a feather cannot be dark. Here the word light has two meanings, weight and brightness. In business, equivocation can occur in advertising or contracts when vague terms are used to mislead people. For example, claiming a product is natural might mean it contains one natural ingredient, but not necessarily that it is entirely organic. Clarity and precision are essential to avoid this fallacy. The 13th fallacy is the fallacy of false analogy. This occurs when an argument is based on a comparison between two things that are not truly comparable in any kind of relevant way. For example, if someone is heard saying that employees are like nails, just as nails must be hit on the head to make them work, so must the employees. Now this analogy is not a logical, kind of a thing, because humans and nails are entirely different in nature. In business, this fallacy appears when one compares two companies, markets, or strategies without acknowledging their fundamental differences. Sound reasoning requires recognizing distinctions, not ignoring them. The 14th fallacy is the fallacy of appeal to hypocrisy. This fallacy basically attempts to discredit another person's argument by pointing out their own inconsistency instead of addressing the actual issue. For example, you say that smoking is bad, but you smoke yourself. The truth of an argument does not depend on speaker's personal behavior. In business, this happens when criticism is avoided by shifting attention to the critic's flaws. For instance, if someone questions unethical advertising and the company replies, but our competitors do the same, that does not justify the act basically, since we have heard that two wrongs do not make a right. The 15th fallacy is the fallacy of composition and division. The fallacy of composition assumes that what is true for the individual parts must be true for the whole as well, while the fallacy of division, on the other hand, goes vice versa and assumes that what is true for the whole must be true for each part. For example, each player on this team is excellent, so the team must be excellent, is a fallacy of composition. The reverse, that the team is excellent, so each player must be excellent, is the fallacy of division. In business, assuming that every department in a successful company is performing well is the fallacy of division. Logical reasoning requires examining parts and wholes independently. The 16th fallacy is the loaded question. This occurs when a question is framed in such a way that it presupposes something unproven or controversial. For example, asking, when did you stop misleading your customers, assumes that the person was misleading the customers in the first place. Such questions basically trap the respondent no matter how they answer. In business, these loaded questions can appear in interviews, negotiations, or surveys where wording manipulates responses. Ethically designed communication should be neutral and should not be misleading at all. The 17th fallacy is the fallacy of the middle ground. This happens when someone assumes that the compromise between two oppositions must be truth. For example, if someone says that the earth is flat and another one says earth is round, the middle ground will be that it is half flat and half round, which is obviously incorrect. In business, two departments disagree and management simply picks a middle solution without evaluating evidence. It may result in poor decisions. Compromise can be good in some situations, but the truth and logic are not always found in the middle. The 18th fallacy is the fallacy of no true Scotsman. This fallacy redefines a group to exclude counterexamples and protect a generalization. For example, no Scotsman puts sugar on his food. When someone replies, but my uncle is Scottish and he does, the response might be, well, no true Scotsman would do that. So you see, this definition basically changes to maintain the claim. In business, this can occur when a company insists that no real professional would leave this company, even when experienced employees do leave. Such reasoning ignores the reality and protects pride rather than the truth. The 19th fallacy is the anecdotal evidence. This occurs when personal stories or isolated examples are used as proof instead of proper data or research. For example, my friend made money from that investment, so it must be a great opportunity. One person's experience cannot represent a general truth. In business, relying on a single experience or a single set of experiences rather than systematic data can lead to overconfidence and bad decisions. Anecdotes can illustrate a point, but they cannot replace statistical or factual evidence. The 20th and the final fallacy for today is the burden of proof. This occurs when someone shifts the responsibility of proving a claim onto others instead of providing the evidence themselves. For example, you cannot prove that my business idea won't work, so it must be a good one. In logic, the person making the claim has the responsibility to provide the proof as well. In business, this fallacy often appears when someone defends a weak strategy by saying, you can't prove me wrong. So dear students, good reasoning actually requires presenting evidence in support of one's own position, not expecting others to disprove it. In conclusion, understanding these fallacies basically helps everyone, including us as well, to think and communicate with greater precision. Each of these reasoning errors, from bandwagon to burden of proof, can occur in business decisions, marketing campaigns, leadership communication, or personal decision making. Recognizing them protects us from the manipulation and helps us maintain intellectual honesty. Logical reasoning is not a skill for philosophers, it is a tool for professionals as well who want to lead with clarity, fairness, and credibility. When arguments are based on logic rather than the deception or confusion, both individuals and organizations make wiser and more ethical choices. Thank you.